Hello, I'm Simon and welcome to the SciRob YouTube channel, and in today's video we're going to be changing the fuel filter, and it's going to be the paper insert type which is fitted to this Volvo V70, but it's also on thousands of other cars, this style of filter. You can see it just near the back wheel on this particular car, and in order to remove it I'm going to use this dedicated fuel filter removal tool. You can't really get a socket on underneath, so yeah, you need this tool because the access is kind of offset. It's a 1/2 inch square drive, and I've just cobbled together with a ratchet and some extensions and some adapters something that will work quite nicely. So we get under there and you can see with that kind of cross member part of the subframe there, you wouldn't get a socket underneath directly, so I get everything loosened up initially with this just to make sure that the housing is going to come off. And you do need a decent bit of pressure normally on these because it's plastic on plastic, so quite a lot of friction over the years holding it on. Then I'm going to attach a drain hose. This particular one is 5mm internal diameter, this tube, and I'm putting it onto the drain nipple. That nipple serves two purposes: to empty the fuel filter before you change it, and also with routine maintenance. If you feel like you might have water in the fuel filter housing, then you would attach a hose to drain any water out of the housing, because water is more dense than fuel, and so it would sink to the bottom. But water in the housing is a pretty rare problem on these, to be honest. So once I've then loosened that nut that the nipple is attached to, on this particular one it's an 18mm, I'm just loosening the whole housing, and that will allow some air in, and you can then see the flow of fuel start to happen coming down the tube. If everything's done up tight, you won't get any fuel flow. So now everything's loosened up and we've got a bit of air going in there. It's now going to drain all of the fuel out of the filter housing, and there's a surprising amount in there. And even then it's not everything out. This is around 600ml, so well over half a litre just in the fuel filter housing. Don't go undoing these and just think you're going to undo the housing because you'll just get fuel everywhere. So you do have to drain them first, otherwise you're going to have a big mess and a big smell on your hands, literally. So once that's done, I close up the bleed nipple and just undo the housing. Still try and keep it upright if you can, because there may still be fuel in there. And then it's just going to be a question of pulling out the fuel filter insert, and on this it just pulls straight down. Once again, be careful. This one has a closed bottom on it, a plastic bottom, and as a result, fuel still gathers within the filter itself that wasn't able to drain out. So take your time, keep everything upright until you're clear of the car, and then you'll be able to empty out the old filter. And look at the state of that. It's jet black, and these are a kind of light creamy beige when they're brand new, so that's had a lot of muck go on it over the years. So it's just a wipe around then of the filter housing, just using some kitchen towel. That gets the excess dirt out of the housing, and then I'm just going to spray some brake cleaner inside. And what that will do is just give it an extra clean. Spray brake cleaner onto the kitchen towel itself, and get everything cleaned up. I'm also cleaning up the threads. And you can see inside, so that central tube, that's what pulls the fuel up through into the high pressure pump, and the fuel sprays down around the outside of the filter in order to get filtered before it gets sucked up and used by the engine. So that's a nice clean housing. And I'm just using some spray silicone lubricant, just a little bit onto the threads, because that will help when you replace the housing, it'll just help things just slip along, the threads slip along nicely against each other, so you can get the housing tightened up. So there's the old filter there, and as you can see there was still a little bit left in there, so I reckon we've got well over 700 ml just out of that housing, so it is quite surprising how much is held in there. And I'm going to keep that diesel because if there is any debris, and there was only a few tiny bits of debris, they'll sink to the bottom, and I'll use that diesel in order to prime the new filter. There's the Volvo part number for this particular car. Don't pay too much attention though to part numbers. Do check for your individual case on your individual car. And as you can see, this particular filter, the genuine Volvo one, is made by MAN. You can use basically for fuel filters MAN, Perflux, Marl, Hengst, Bosch. All of those will make excellent quality fuel filters. So once again with the lower housing now, just spraying brake cleaner in there, getting the old seal out of the housing there, getting brake cleaner in there, and getting that dried out. And I'll also be using some silicone lubricant, once again just on the threads, just to coat the threads, just to help reinstallation. Then on the housing itself, just giving that nut a little tighten. I'll check it again though once it's under the car and once it's reinstalled, just to make sure there's no leaks. And as you can see, it's only 25 Newton meters to tighten this up to, so it really isn't a tight fit. So this is the one that I'm using here. This is made by Perflux. Perflux make the genuine filter on other Volvo cars, so although they don't make the genuine one for this exact engine model, they're incredibly high quality and only cost about £5 as well. So as always, when checking any parts, just compare it with the old one. Just check for the dimensions, the diameter, the length of it. Check the seal similar as well. And then I'm just very gently lowering it into the diesel. Like I say, any bits of debris have sunk to the bottom, so I'm just very lightly dipping it into what is very clean diesel there, and that will prime up and charge up all of the filter media. So priming once it's fitted to the car takes hardly any time at all. If you insert all of these dry, priming takes forever. Now on this, the seal that came with the new filter is slightly different to the seal from the old one. I was a little bit hesitant at first, but I'm happy with how it's worked out. The old filter actually fits down into that gap around the outer ring. It fits in properly into the gap, whereas the new filter seal has a groove over it, a groove around the perimeter, which you can see there. So it actually fits over the raised portion just there. The actual filter, the seal itself, didn't fit down in the gap like the old one. I tried that and I wasn't happy with how it was, whereas doing it that way, it fits absolutely perfectly. So a little bit hesitant when I was initially doing it, but as you'll see, it works out fine. But I'll keep you informed. If this isn't the correct way to install this kind of seal, then I'll let you know. But it worked absolutely fine. I test drove it, checked again about an hour after a test drive as well, and everything was bone dry. So yeah, I'm happy with how that's worked out. And then once again with the diesel, just adding a little bit into the bowl as well. You're going to have to keep that upright. It doesn't really sit very well, so make sure you don't tip that over. So I'm just putting a bit in there, and that, along with the fact that the new filter insert is fully soaked with diesel as well, the priming process will be very quick. This particular car has a pump inside the tank which forces fuel through the filter and then onto the engine, and then the high pressure pump takes over. So with bleeding this particular diesel engine, it's just a question of turning on the ignition, cycling the ignition maybe 4 or 5 times, and then set the engine running, and the engine should run and all should be well. So putting in the filter insert was straightforward, just it locates on that central pipe, and then with this, just very lightly, don't force it. There's no cross threads, as you can see. I can turn it by hand quite easily, and you just keep going until you can't turn it anymore by hand, and then you just nip it up a little bit more with the special tool. And then once again, getting the brake cleaner on there. It's not about cleaning the filter housing, it's about getting it dry. It's about making sure there's absolutely no remnants of diesel, because when you then run the engine, because you're going to test to make sure that it doesn't leak, you want that absolutely bone dry. Like I say, don't worry about it being dusty or appearing to need cleaning. It's not about getting it clean, it's about getting it dry. It's very exposed there, so it's going to get filthy in pretty short order anyway. And then I just left the engine running, went for a drive, jacked up the rear end again, and there's absolutely no leaks. It's bone dry. The engine starts and runs perfectly. So yeah, it seems to be job done. Like I say though, I will keep you informed if it turns out that seal fitment wasn't quite right how I did it. And then if we just take a closer look here at the old filter, as you can see, completely black, and it's 9 years old. You can just see a little bit of the colour of what it should be like, and if I raise the exposure we can hopefully see inside the filter, and there you can see just inside the filter that's kind of how it was originally. And so in comparison to how it is now, you can see why the filter was changed, and that will prevent any starting issues in the future caused by fuel flow. And that's it. Hope you find that useful.